So you want to be a dice maker? You're going to need a mold. This may seem like an easy thing, but once you really dive into the world of dice making, it doesn't take long to realize how confusing molds can be. Where do you buy them from? What kind of material works best in them? Should you just make them yourselves? What about those super cheap ones on Amazon? I'm going to try to break some of this down for you. Last year, when I first moved into my new house, I did a mold review of a bunch of different mold makers on Etsy, and so I'm going to be sharing some of that footage with you today on this channel in hopes that it can help make your decision on where to buy molds from a little bit easier. I know we're already on the same page, and we're not going to buy these terrible molds from Amazon. We're just not. I promise, at the end of the day, they are so much more trouble than they are worth. The lids are such a pain in the butt to get on. You need pipettes to fill them up. They just never look good, and especially if you don't have a pressure pot, you're putting in an awful lot of time and effort and wasting a lot of resin on something that's really not worth it. So, if not Amazon molds, then where should you start? May I recommend Etsy? In my time as a dice maker, I have bought molds from a lot of different mold makers, and I actually made it my mission last year to review quite a few of them on Etsy because I didn't really have functional masters at the time, and I was moving into a brand new house, and it just seemed like a really great project. I did buy the terrible Amazon molds because I bought them before I actually started talking to dice makers, and I didn't know how bad they were. But very quickly I realized that, bought a pressure pot, and decided to get a slab mold from a real mold maker before I tried my hand at making my own molds. The first ever slab mold that I bought was on Etsy. The company I got that very first mold from was actually Warpy Dice, who you can still find on Etsy. I definitely recommend them. The quality was very good. If I had any complaints, it would just be that the numbers are not indented very deeply into the molds, so it's very easy to oversand and sand off the one face, especially as a beginner when your sanding is probably not going to be amazing yet anyway. This is kind of a crucial problem. So if I did have one complaint about the Warpy Dice mold, it would be that. But otherwise, the key system was great. They were very easy to understand. Nice, crisp, clean lines. I never really saw any flaws or issues with the mold, and I used the crap out of that first slab mold. I probably did 25 pours out of it. Last year, when I wanted to do these mold maker reviews, I did buy more molds from Warpy Dice because I just wanted to include them, and just because I'd already worked with them, I didn't think it was fair to leave them out of the conversation. So I'm going to show you the unboxing video that I did when I got those Warpy Dice molds, and I'm going to show you what I made with them. Unfortunately, I had some problems with the audio on this file, so I'm just going to sort of let you know what happened while I was unboxing this mold. First of all, I'm explaining that I ordered 3 single molds from Warpy Dice. I ordered a sprue mold from Warpy Dice, which we will talk about in another episode down the line. But what I really want to address is these 2 cap molds that you see me making Infinity Stone inspired dice out of. They both looked beautiful. They were called B grade molds on their website, but I couldn't find a single problem with either of the molds, either before or after. The D mold, everything looked really crisp, and the shine was really nice on Warpy Dice. I do normally just have to polish the one face. That one ends up being matte because of whatever mold release they use, which is fine because you have to polish that face anyway, so it's really not a big deal. Everything looked great, and I can tell you I have used these molds many times since this, and they are still holding up really well, so that is just another indicator that Warpy Dice has really fantastic quality. Another mold maker that I bought from was Druid Dice. I wanted to review at least one chunk mold, and so I thought Druid Dice was a great place to start. I'm going to show you the unboxing video for that one as well. I do want to point out, in that unboxing video, you saw me looking very confused at the key system and then finally figuring it out and not really stressing about it. Unfortunately, when the mold is full of resin and it's just really covered, it's very hard to see the keys, and the first time I used this mold, I actually got really concerned I wasn't going to be able to line the keys up. Going forward, I had to take a Sharpie and black out one of the slots so that I could tell exactly how it lined up. But for me, this was a miss. If the keys are so confusing that you can't figure out how to line it up when they're covered in resin, that's a no for me. So great mold, really good quality. It was nice and shiny, nice crisp clean lines, but not being able to figure out where the keys line up was definitely a negative for me. I also reviewed this mold from Dueling Dragons Dice, and I'm gonna show you that now. The next one is from Dueling Dragons Dice. Love the packaging. Oh, and there's a little card. This is top-notch packaging. And then it came with some instructions, which is fantastic. I think this is the one that I bought 2 molds from that are exactly the same. I like the font. And I'm going to be sending one of them to Whitney over at Smoking Glue Guns, and I'm going to make her a D20, and she's going to make me a D20. We're going to switch. So that's going to be fun. And honestly, right off the bat, these molds look great. Really clean lines. I don't know what they used for the keys, but they like really stay in place. Almost looks like little bolts or something. It's pretty clever. We'll see how it goes. One of the things that I had originally thought was actually super cool about this mold was the key system. Unfortunately, it turned out to be more of a negative than a positive. I think the idea had been to make the keys with something unique so that it would kind of lock in and not lift, almost like little bolts or something, but I find the opposite ends up being true. I get a lot of lifting on this mold, even when I weigh it down. I've actually never made a dice with this mold that didn't have at least a slight raised face. So that's another bummer for me. It has been a year. I don't know if they've changed their key system in that time, but just something to note. And this is another one with pretty shallow numbers, although I do love the font. It's very simple and nice and clean. The last was this slab mold from Orbital Dice, which I hadn't ordered a slab. I ordered a single mold, and I think they messed up my order, but I wasn't mad about it. I will say it's a great slab mold. It is another one with some shallow numbers. This is just something, I don't know, maybe I'm the only dice maker that has a problem with oversanding faces, but I don't think I am. And I think especially for beginners, which is a lot of the people I know that are buying from mold makers are newer to the hobby, I just feel like having the shallow numbers is always going to be a negative. That being said, it's a great font, easy to read, not too bulky, pretty easy to ink. Again, it is a little shallow, so sometimes the ink just kind of pops right out. And otherwise, it's a great mold. I don't love making molds with silicone this squishy, but I will say using them is great. So, like if somebody else is going to make it for me, that's perfect. But when I'm making them, I just like them to be a little bit firmer. Otherwise, I find that I like make more mistakes in the actual making process. I will go into mold making in depth down the line. We're just not going to do that now because getting started, I do highly recommend you just buy a mold. You can learn how to work with silicone once you've figured out how to work with resin. Now, they are not on Etsy, so they got left out of my original review because I was just reviewing mold makers on Etsy, but my absolute favorite mold maker is NanoLab Maker. I actually still have Kaylee make me molds to this day. In fact, I just got one in the mail today that I'm so excited to use, and that was out of my own masters, of course, but Kaylee does make them using her own master dice for anybody who is interested in buying molds, and I cannot recommend her enough. Her numbers are nice and deep. The lines are always crystal clean. If you have any problems, she is so quick to offer a refund or a replacement. I've never had problems working with her. And if I had to just pick one mold maker in the series, I would say this is the one you should definitely go with. She offers full slab molds. She also sells petite dice and tiny dice, which not recommended for beginners. And then of course there are chunk molds. Now this one is actually a Magic the Gathering spin down chunk, and I'm using this one for the video because the mold is quite a bit newer. If you are getting started in dice making and you don't want to do the full cost of buying a slab mold, getting one of these 30mm D20 molds from NanoLab Maker is a great place to start. It's much cheaper and it's a big enough item that you're really going to be able to see what you're doing. So if you really need just one recommendation at the end of this video and you're not sure where to start and you're just going to go on my word, definitely NanoLab Maker is the one to go with. I would say second, followed by Warpy Dice and then Orbital Dice. That's it for today. If you liked this video, please click like. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, click subscribe. And come back tomorrow because we're going to make a set of dice. We're actually going to make a full set, and then we're going to make some singles in some of these molds I just showed you. So we're, in essence, going to do another mold comparison right here on the channel. We're going to make some dice. What?